when you look around, I mean, there aren't a lot of folks that look like me and you at C-suite, at board level, really at the top kind of holders of power in organizations across UK, Europe, the US. When you think about that, how do individuals, organizations start to break that cycle of not being the only one, but kind of opening the door for others?
Well, I think you're exactly right. I mean, and it is unfortunate that that's the case. And only a couple of years ago, I was a little bit on the outside. I did a lot of stuff in the private space, a lot of stuff in the philanthropy space, but not a lot in the sort of corporate public space. And, the market, the other side would say, hey, we didn't know you wanted to. We thought you were too busy. I'm like, well, you never asked. So how would you know? And so there's part of me that said, well, second, I would say it is changing. The difference over a year ago and 2 years ago is dramatic. We're moving in the right direction. But is it fast enough or enough? No, it isn't. And so what's the thing to do? It's stop talking about it and just do it. I think there's two things we have to think about. One is that we need to make sure that we, people like us that are interested in it, make sure that our interests are known and that we are prepared, not prepared to jump over the invisible hurdles, but prepared in that we understand what it takes to sort of be on a corporate or public board. We've asked questions, we've networked with people, we understand what they're going to need so that we're prepared to do a good job, because it's not just important that we do a good job for the institution we're using, we are opening and keeping the door open for dozens, thousands after us. And that's how I feel. My job, whether it's on the Legal and General Board, I think I'm doing a good job at the job and on the committees I'm on and at the General Board, but I also am very conscious and aware that how I'm regarded is settling down, opening minds, and opening opportunities for those after me that say, like, actually, Ric Lewis was excellent at this, and I want him on my board. And I'm like, well, maybe not me, but here's a bunch of other people that have expressed interest.
Yeah. So on one side, it's more about, folks kind of putting their hand up and doing the work, doing the prepared work to get to it. What would you say to business leaders who are trying to find or saying, having open commitments that they are trying to diversify their boards, they're looking for a Ric Lewis? What would your advice be to them?
Well, I think, and this sounds a little flippant, but try harder. I mean, it isn't hard to find more candidates if you're really interested in finding them. I always say, like, if your shareholders or your board set a target that if you didn't accomplish it within 2 years, they were going to cut half your pay, you'd sure as heck figure out how to do it, right?
Yeah.
I challenged one of my friends who's a FTSE 25 CEO and said, I won't use his name because that would be unfair. And I said, if your board challenged you to have 20% of your C-suite team be ethnically and gender diverse, completely in the next 36 months, how would you do it? And he said, honestly, I'd probably call you and ask you for advice.
Yeah.
And he is making great movements, but it's like, and so that's one of the things that I would say that is probably going to seem like it's antithetical to some people, is that when we go through this process, we need to demand what we expect is change, but we also have to give room for people to not know what they're doing and help them, right?
Yeah.
It means that I always tell my kids, if I ever ask a question seeking knowledge, that has to be okay. You cannot mock me. You know some things that I don't, whether it's about Marvel Comics or about physics. If I ask a dumb question, but I'm seeking knowledge from you, that has to be okay. And I think in our pursuit, whether it's angry, upset, demanding, righteous, rightful, militant, we have to make room for people to go, actually, I just don't know how to do this.
Yeah.
Can you help me think it through? Because that's the only way we're going to make progress. Because there's a lot of well-intentioned people that are in these spots that don't know the first 3 steps. And whether we like it or not, no one is going to sacrifice their career to make the wrong steps just to include somebody. So we have to figure out how we build the bridges to make that possible. Not take excuses when they don't do it, but if 1 + 1 can't equal 3, it may equal 0.
Yeah. And on that point, Ric, the numbers to your point, the numbers are improving, but they are going at a very slow clip, right? And so you yourself have created multiple businesses. Do you think that Black individuals, people of color, should actually start looking to start more companies and more businesses, and do the entrepreneurship kind of journey rather than trying to climb the ladder? What have been, having you doing both, what have been some of the advantages and disadvantages to starting your own thing versus having a senior position in a company?
So the answer I'd give is all of the above. Whether you start a business or not, having the skills and the courage and at least a little bit of the experience to know that you could start a business is valuable, because that's also attractive to the people that are trying to have you join their organization. I mean, my long suit seems to be in finance and real estate. I don't think so. I think when they really got it, they realized I've built and scaled 3 businesses on 2 continents and have an international client base. They're like, oh, so that's actually what we do, right? But if you just look at me on paper, they go, he's run a bunch of real estate private equity firms in the US and Europe very successfully. But the skills I really got was, how do you build a brand? How do you keep a team? How do you build a culture that's going to exceed the expectations of its original goals and its shareholders? And that's common to everyone. So trying to build that scale, that base of knowledge that says, look, whether I'm in a big wrapper like Legal in General, or a FTSE 25 company, or I'm in a small wrapper like a little startup that I have on my own, a lot of the themes are the same. Just the markets, the customers, and the size might be different.
And I suppose on that point, you serve currently on the Legal and General board. Has the conversation changed about diversity and inclusion? 5-10 years ago, the conversation was probably there, but more so focused on gender. With some of the recent events that have happened that have really propelled race, are those conversations happening at board level and even at Tristan?
Absolutely, 1,000%. The conversations. So, and I say it that way for purpose, but actions too. I don't want to keep talking about Legal in General, but Legal in General, and I've just joined the board of Imperial College as well, there has been a big push to make sure that that board does not look the same. And I've even been very clear in my joining of Imperial that, I had specific goals for my joining, and that if we found 3 years from now in a review, they wouldn't have to tell me to leave, because I would leave if we weren't really serious about achieving greater diversity in sort of the academic ranks, the board, and the student population, from under-resourced and, underrepresented communities. It doesn't have to be all Black or brown. I just want people that have been overlooked, that have great potential, to get a chance to realize that potential at some of the greater institutions. So I think both is happening. The conversation is definitely happening. I think shareholders, the focus on ESG, the historical perspective on Black Lives Matter and what happened over the last, summer and a half ago, has shaped everyone's thought process. What I'm worried about is it won't turn into action at every institution, and so that's where we need to keep the pressure on.